So something is happening at last, and that is that JRM and his European research group have finally put something out. And literally, this is being torn to shreds in every single aspect you can think of by experts in every single field you can think of. No one has come out and said, yeah, that's a good plan. And there is something happening. Now, I don't know if there is going to be a leadership contest. We've talked about this before. I don't think it's going to happen. Partly because there is no one at this moment who could replace Theresa May. Now, I say that because Boris does not have full support of the Conservative Party. Jacob Rees-Mogg does not have the full support of the Conservative Party. Theresa May, on the other hand, has cross-party support of the Conservative Party. Now, we've talked about this problem before, but I'll just go over it quickly again before we get into this. Is that if they trigger a leadership challenge and they lose, then you have the problem of they can't issue another leadership challenge for 2 years. So that puts them in a very precarious situation. They will not topple May unless there is a clear candidate that they can get in. Now, what this group are trying to do is exactly the same as what the original group of people that forced David Cameron to have the referendum in the first place. They are trying to put pressure on her, or in him in this case. Now, their old threat used to be, if you don't give us a referendum, we'll just walk to UKIP. We'll become a UKIP bloc. UKIP will then have 40 MPs. That was always their threat. But now with UKIP completely gone and in complete disarray, that threat of being able to walk somewhere else is now gone. They've been ridiculed, very rightly so, for having no plan, and now they've finally brought out a plan. And now we're going to go over what Ian Dunt had to say about Jacob Rees-Mogg's garbled nonsense over his new latest press release. So, the Economists for Free Trade are a ragtag bunch of Brexit-supporting eccentrics whose primary function is to make all other economists feel better about their life choices. Their latest press release, which comes with a Jacob Rees-Mogg stamp of approval, is a masterclass in babbling nonsense. It is designed to promote their new report on why Britain would be fine if it fell off a cliff edge in March next year, contrary to findings of every credible independent body in economics or indeed any industrial body. It is hard to find a single accurate sentence in the entire thing. It is so full of legal, economic and illogical misunderstandings that it is genuinely easier to highlight the sections of it which are true. However, that will be less fun, so let's stick with the traditional methodology. It starts with the first sentence of the second paragraph. A world trade deal under WTO rules would boost the UK's trade with the rest of the world, including Europe, it reads. It is a quite complex, completely insane thing, and it's quite a completely insane thing to suggest. Firstly, there is no world trade deal. There is a World Trade Organization safety net, which, among other things, bans discrimination in trading agreements between countries unless they have a trade deal. Calling this arrangement a world trade deal is the worst kind of misleading and cynical advertising speak. Second, the WTO terms are not going to boost the UK's trade with Europe. There is no scenario painted by anyone on any side of the debate which would suggest that there was clearly no reason to believe it on the basis of what is written here. It is the kind of thing you say when you have soared off into your own special land where the rules and causes do not apply. This sentence suggests that the economists for free trade are no longer in a fight against the EU, but against the basic concepts of language and meaning. If the EU insisted on slapping WTO tariffs on British exports, the paper scowls, a schoolboy like pretending to be James Bond, the overall effect would amount to a staggering 13 billion a year boost to UK revenues. The EU is not insisting anything. It has no choice. The WTO non-discrimination provisions mean that you must apply your tariffs equally outside of a trade deal. The authors either know this or are liars, or they don't and they are idiots. And this is one of the things that they are counting on. But here's the thing, and we've said this time and time again, if these tariffs do get applied, all these companies that operate just-in-time solutions or make things and then are shipped back to Europe, for example, a gearbox, it's a gear shift, can cross the channel 3 times before it's put into a car. So, where are all those businesses going to go? Oh, that's right, they're just going to go, bye UK, and just move into Europe. You know, this isn't rocket science what these companies are going to do. If it's cheaper and more better and cost effective for them to go and operate in Europe, they will do. Where are we? And at other points, the report appears to recognise the non-discrimination provision and then simultaneously misunderstand it so comprehensively that it turns the world on its head. Armageddon-style predictions that the EU would freeze out British goods by refusing to recognise them as complying with EU standards in breach of WTO rules and in a worse way that it treats any other non-EU country are simply non-realistic, the report reads. You may have noticed that it is very hard to follow the writing. The sentence structure is an absolute mess, and they appear to be unaware of the existence of commas. Put aside the grammar for a moment and focus on the argument. They have everything back to front. The EU is not proposing to treat Britain differently to any other non-EU country. The entire problem is that it is treating Britain as any other non-EU country. And that entails a substantial downgrading of our relationship. In a way, this is the principle of the report, because it is the point where its argument becomes perfectly inverse to the reality of what it is discussing. It is a magic mirror, a world of 180-degree wrongness. Imposing non-tariff barriers to trade are illegal under WTO rules. Then it adds a point which is simply false. If it were true, then it would be an awful lot of illegality going on in the WTO. Given that there are non-tariff barriers to trade everywhere, having a different language is a non-tariff barrier. Passing a law banning certain plastic packaging or chemicals in the production are non-tariff barriers. The single market aims to eradicate non-tariff barriers. For instance, by melding together regulations. It is precisely this project which the Brexiteers demanded to leave a couple of years ago because it was apparently an intolerable infringement on our sovereignty. Now they claim it is everywhere, all around us, all good, never visible like a deity. Switching to a WTO world trade deal under WTO rules is no step in the dark, because the UK already conducts about half of its trade under WTO rules, and 6 out of the 10 of the EU's main trading partners, including China, India, the USA and Japan, trade with it under a WTO regime, the press release says. They are clearly oblivious to how free trade operates. There is almost no country on earth which operates only by WTO rules. States use a variety of trading structures to allow goods to flow more easily. Mutual recognition agreements, for instance, allow you to do anything from trusting another country's safety checks to providing a priority lane during import. The EU has had hundreds of these things, lots of them, with prized trading partners like China and the US. It is simply wrong to say, as the Economics for Free Trade do, that over the past 25 years the top 4 exporters to the EU, including the USA and China, have all conducted their trade under the WTO rules. They don't. There are countless other fallacies, logical manufacturers and howling errors in just the press release, let alone the full report. But life is too short to read it all. There comes a point where you have to spare yourself the intellectual damage and the sheer cost in brain cells of sustained exposure to this stuff. We are at the tail end of Brexit, with around 6 months until the end of Article 50, and this is where the hard Brexit, and this is what the hard Brexiteers have to offer. This is the sum total of their proposition. A report which can barely comprehend a sentence without misleading people, and which has no understanding of the most basic elements of the matters it proposes to address. Yesterday, Rees-Mogg confirmed that in another report, a 140-page alternative plan for Brexit by the Tory MPs opposed to Theresa May's Chequers proposal had been permanently spiked. From what we know of it, the paper appears to have been in the same genre as the Economics for Free Trade report, a nationalistic /fic in which Britain plays the role of the prominent action hero while the world reality weakly submits to its will. There would be tax cuts, huge tax cuts across the board, but also there will be massive spending, not least on a nuclear defence shield in space and an expeditionary force sent to the Falklands for no discernible reason. Ultimately, it was so deranged and bizarre, even Mogg thought it was best to shelve it. Boris Johnson keeps making general stabbing actions at the Prime Minister, but what? He has no plan. He wrote in the Mail yesterday that the Irish backstop had put Britain into a negotiating headlock. It's a humiliation, he said. But what proposal does he have to fix it? Nothing. There is only a vague assertion of technical solutions. Around the world, people are admonishing frontier checks, he says. What we can do here, failing to mention that he just handed a campaign which makes border control its core message. So it was part of a campaign that made border control its core message. Even the most advanced borders, like the Canada-US, have no checks, and so do the most regularly limited ones, intimate ones, like Norway and Sweden. The technical solution he alludes to do not exist. They had months to try and show us how these technical solutions would work, not just generally, but specifically for implementation in March next year. They have not, because they cannot. Just like all of the promises, they crumble to dust as soon as they are touched. There is nothing. They have nothing. After all the swagger and the radio interviews and the parliamentary machinations and the think tank reports and the speeches, they've not a single viable proposal to offer. At some point, either months or years from now, there will be a stocktake of what was said, and during this period and how key people behaved. It will not be kind to them. And that's how history will judge these people who led Brexit. They were idiots who had no plan. You know, they've been banging on, as they said, banging on for leaving the EU for years, yet now, when they've achieved their objective, there's no plan. There is no plan to be put forward. As has been said, here in this article and multiple times, not a single country trades solely on WTO rules. There are hundreds of different, negotiating different papers, recognising different standards, from safety standards, checks, all these different kinds of things, hundreds of thousands of different things, just haven't even been thought about. And it's shocking that these people who have been saying this, that they want to leave the EU for years, just don't have a plan. And yet that's where they are forcing us. They are forcing us to off a cliff edge, as I've alluded to in the past, for I think nefarious reasons, because they want the UK to be this low tax, zero tariff, low tax, whatever version of Singapore, and that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen at all. And the deregulation is what's worrying, because deregulation isn't just for things like products and services. This goes into workers' rights and other things that we are going to lose, and people just aren't even aware of what we are going to lose. I mean, I think there is worth a video at some point. I'll have to do some research on it, on just what and workers' rights the EU have implemented, not from the government, but what the EU itself has implemented and has come into UK law because it is part of EU law. That would be worth looking up, I think, to a lot of people. I wouldn't be surprised if there's already a website, but I'll have a look at it. But if anyone knows, or if someone knows somebody else who's done another video of it and just save me time making it, point me in the direction and I will, shout it out to the world. This is what it is. You'll bit of free advertising and all that. So yeah, once again, Brexiteers without a plan. They never had one, and that's why we're in the situation that we are in. And they've got no one to blame but themselves for this. Brexiteers are to blame. It's not Remainers, it's not the EU, it's the Brexiteers themselves. They said that this was a good idea, and when they were asked to say, well, where's your plan for this? They just went, sovereignty! And that was it. That was literally their whole kit and caboodle. I mean, it's hilarious as what has been said here for Boris Johnson. The fact that he's just said, where is it? Where is it? There's nothing to fix. There is a vague technical solutions. Yeah, around the world, people are abolishing frontier checks, he says. And then he fails to mention we've got to remember him saying that. Remember, he was part of the campaign that campaigned to be in more control of their borders, and he has just said people are abolishing all these things. They are, because they are working together, like the European Union. And remember, all these things, there are other organisations like the European Union happening all over the world, because they've seen how successful the European Union is. I think we're moving into an age where the idea of like a national, nationalism is old hat. It's gone. It's had its day. The idea of a single country is completely useless, especially in like today's economy. You need groups of countries working together towards a common goal. That is how you get stuff done. That is why the EU is effective. And is it right all the time? No, but neither is our parliament either. So, but if you have countries working together, then you can come up with better solutions, because someone in Germany might have a solution to your problem. Well, now with Brexit, you can't go to Germany to get that solution because it's, blocked off to us. But there you go. Yet more Brexit nonsense.